Welcome back to the Quilt Addicts Anonymous Block of the Month series. I'm Stephanie Sebbing. This month we've got the June block. It's a real simple block, and from here on out we're working on the final piece border. So we just have 4 of each block to make. As usual, I'm making it in 2 color ways so you can see how it'll look in 2 different color palettes, because everybody's taste is different and your fabric choices change the look of the entire quilt. We're going to start off making half square triangles. And we've made a lot of these in this quilt so far. We're going to start off by drawing a line from point to point on the wrong side of the light fabric. Then you're going to layer them right sides together and sew a scant 1/4 inch on either side of the drawn line. Cut them apart on the drawn line and press them open with the seam underneath the dark side of the fabric. Then it's very important to square up your block because it's not going to be perfectly square. When you're doing that, make sure that the 45-degree line on your ruler is on the seam line of the half square triangle, and then you will have perfect points where they need to be. Just a reminder that you can download free printable instructions that include all your cutting instructions and fabric requirements at quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Just click on the Block of the Month tab and you'll be able to get to the Craftsy link from there where you can get a PDF download. Now we're going to learn a new technique today, and it's strip piecing. So for the next part of this block, we're going to sew these together first and then cut them apart, and that's a lot faster than cutting teeny tiny pieces for each block and then sewing them together. Let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do for strip piecing is I'm going to lay these pieces right sides together, and then I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down them until I get to the end of that strip. And I'm just going to keep lining my fabrics up as I go. So now we're going to press this open. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you set your seam. And this is very important because it helps keep the strip from becoming wobbly. Sometimes when you do strip piecing, you can have a bend in them. And then I always like to finger press this open first. And I start from the center and sort of work my way out. And that helps, again, keep it from getting a bend, and you have a nice straight seam that way. And then you want to have your iron completely on the side you're pressing away from, and then just drag it up, and then you want to lift it and do it again in the next section. I'm going to make sure that one of my inch lines is on the seam line, and that'll make sure that everything is nice and square as I cut through here. And you want to make sure you overcut on your first one to get rid of those selvages, because we don't want to use those. They have a different consistency than the rest of the fabric, so we want to make sure to slice those off. But after that, you just cut 4.5 inches and make sure that you're square on the side and square along your inch line, and then you'll have pieces that line up perfectly. Now it's time to put our block together. I always like to set it out the way it's supposed to go together, right next to the sewing machine. That reduces the chances of me sewing a block together wrong and having to rip. So that way I can just grab my first row and lay it right sides together with the block next to it. Arrange my seams and corners so that they match up. And then I can just feed that through the sewing machine. And then when I'm done with that, I'll just take the second one and do the second row as well. I'm going to press these a certain way so that way when we put the rows together, the seams won't butt. So that way it'll make piecing a lot easier. So I'm going to press it toward on the outside rows so that the strip piece unit, that the seam is underneath that. That way we won't be going against that point as well. Once I'm done pressing everything, I always lay it back out in the way that it is supposed to go together. It's a quality control checkpoint. You can make sure that you've sewn everything together correctly so far. And then also it helps you make sure you sew the rest of it together correctly and you don't have to rip any seams. So now we're just going to sew the other side of the row together the same way that we've sewed everything else so far. So that way we have 3 rows going together. For the center block, you want to make sure that your seams are pressed underneath the strip piece unit. So for every block on this, we're going to have the seams underneath the strip piece unit, and that will make sure that all our seams abut when we put this block together. So since we strategically press so that all the seams are under the strip piece units, our seams are going to abut nicely, which means one more is going to go to the left and one is going to go to the right, which makes for a really accurate join. So what you want to do is flip your rows right sides together, your top row to your middle row, and then you want to get those seams so that they lock nicely in place, and put a pin in the right side of that seam allowance. It's going to look like your left on the video, and you're not going to take that pin out until you are you have your needle locked in the other half of that seam allowance when you're sewing. This next step is very important. We're going to press the block row so that the seam allowance is underneath the top and the bottom rows. So in this case, they're going to be under the half square triangles. For every month from here on out, we're going to press these row seams in opposite directions, and that'll make sure that the seams abut nicely when we put our final border together, and you'll be much happier and it will go much more smoothly for you. So make sure that you press the seam allowance underneath the half square triangles this month. Now you want to pin your bottom row to the middle row, and then once you sew that seam, your block is finished. So this is our finished June block. We only have to make 4 of each block from here on out, so it's easy peasy for the rest of the year. And thank you for following along, and make sure you go to quiltaddictsanonymous.com and click on the Block of the Month tab where you can get the free cutting and download instructions for this. Thanks so much, and happy quilting.